Thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast, Finbarr. Excited to have a conversation today with you. Are Ireland's first ever WMBF National Pro Bodybuilder. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah. There we go. Look, I think that's how I stumbled upon your page initially because I was just kind of finding out about natural bodybuilding, and I think I remember seeing your post, and I can't remember if you had just won your pro card or something like that. Was it maybe like 2016, 2017 or something like that
Yeah,
that you won?
2017. Yeah.
So I guess like bodybuilding has changed a lot since I've gotten into the sport. I started like focusing on the likes of natural bodybuilding specifically. How did natural bodybuilding look like when you first got into sport? Like when you started prepping for your first show, what did the scene look like? Was there many shows? Was many people doing it? What's changed?
Prepping for my first show, is it?
Yeah. Like, and what's kind of changed since you getting into bodybuilding?
I suppose my first show, I didn't know there was a natural bodybuilding. I thought everyone was natural,
Yeah.
And I competed in the NABA in 2008, and I did the juniors, and I went I went back in 2020, and I was kind of hit the hit, kind of realized like, but 2008 too, like there was talks about it, but we didn't know, you know, just train and just first competition, and then in 2010 when I went back and seeing the guys that I was kind of in the same category as me is like turning into real big,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the people backstage, and what I found interesting was they all had a real deep voice, like and they're all huge backstage, and I was just like, right, I did well anyway in the juniors, thank God. I got third for 2010 in the NABA, and um, yeah, there was just a guy come up and he said, "You've good genetics." We said, like, he said it's all drugs. You need continue on with your own sport. Like if you don't want to take it, and I said, yeah, just continue on with the boxing and tip
Mm.
away weights, and that was it. Like, and that was kind of later on. Then um, got a few injuries in boxing and had to refocus just on bodybuilding, which I was always happy to. Because anytime I got an injury with boxing, I was kind of happy because I could just concentrate on bodybuilding. I used to always mix the two of them together, and it was a recipe for injuries. I tell you that.
Mm.
But like when I got back into, I was kind of looking into things I'd like to do in a competition, but I know it's all drugs and stuff like that. So just had to continue just training and just couldn't do anything. And then I seen a poster then for a natural competition, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I liked enter that, and I entered it. I came last, and said I'd kind of keep going anyway, and yeah, I just kept continuing anyway. Then I was competing in the in natural shows in the worlds, then in the UIBBN, because someone seen good potential in me, so he said he wanted to bring me to the worlds, and went to the UIBBN and did a few shows there. And my last show at the UIBBN, I was kind of like, there was a guy, there was no one really kind of testing. I was like, what organization out there that
Yeah.
tests, like, and I did research like yourself and looked in, and WMBF was the main one that was properly tested athletes. So I was like, yeah, I'd like to do that. But there's no way to compete there. I had to go to the States, and eventually then the NBFI became affiliated with them. I said, okay, I'll go back to the NBFI now and I'll compete in that competition because I want to win. Oh, sorry, I want to go for the WMBF. I want to compete in the WMBF.
Mhm.
And went there and won it and got the overalls, and then went to the Worlds and won the Worlds and got the pro card. And yeah, it was all so fast as well. Like,
Yeah.
and, but I finally got to compete in the WMBF, and from there on, then you know, I seen what it was all about and how everyone was tested, and I said, yeah, and it's not just the urine test, it's polygraph and stuff like that, like
Mhm.
for every competitor. So as close as you can possibly get on the natural side, I think WMBF would be the closest, and
Mhm.
that's why being fully focused on everything, training and all that, like, but also fully focused on staying natural. You know, that's a real big priority. So that's why I kind of wanted to go there and get call at a later stage then to kind of, because I was the only pro in Ireland to try and set up something for the WMBF Ireland affiliate, and yeah, we accepted it, and we went for me and Lil, and it's kind of basically the
The
short
story's not
story.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll get into like starting the WMBF in Ireland a little bit later. But I guess I want to go back to some of the things you're saying about your first show, right? Where you're kind
yeah,
of talking about, you didn't really know that there was a difference between the natural side to the enhanced side, and I think that's a kind of similar position that I was in. When I was getting into the gym and starting to get some results, and I had some people like ask me like, oh, would you do shows and stuff like that? But I didn't know that there was such thing as natural bodybuilding. I just assumed that I would have to, go enhanced if I wanted to compete. And that for me was just never something that I was really willing to do. And it's probably definitely influenced out by the time of my life I was in, like, early 20s, when I was fucking in college and going out partying more. Probably want to spend more money
yeah,
on drinking, going to different gigs and stuff like that, than spending money on bleeding, sticking needles in my arms or something. So it was never really something that kind of like interested me in that regard. And then I think for me, I stumbled upon a lot of people who would be well known in the natural scene right now, like Matt Ogus and Alberto Nunez and Eric Helms, and it's, you see them, right? And this is one of the biggest benefits of social media, is that it has been able to grow the natural side of things and show like people that this is an avenue you can go down. Like, you don't have to go enhance. Like, you certainly can. Like, that's always an option. And, if you have the potential to take it all the way to Olympia, like,
yeah,
fair fucking Jews. For a lot of people, they don't want to go through the hassle because there's obviously the legalities that come with that and everything like that, and then just like you're adding a whole different kind of side of managing things, not just your training, your nutrition, your creatine supplementation. But when you see what like can be achieved by top naturals across 5-10 years of good solid training, like, it makes it seem more achievable, make it seem more realistic, and that for me was something that was really inspiring. Like following Matt August's early preps and being like, oh, he looks like that, and he is whatever 180 pounds.
yeah,
I could get there, like I could definitely get there. And he used to always say, he get questions and people say, how do I get to look like you? And he'd just say, keep doing this for the next 5-10 years. And
yeah,
and if you don't look like this, you're doing something wrong, So that was something that always kind of nudged me in that direction. And I guess then as well, with your kind of start where you were competing in the enhanced shows, I guess like when you start doing bodybuilding, you're kind of doing it for the love of it as well, versus
yeah,
and your own self interest, versus it being like, I want to win. And I think that's kind of like where it has come from, versus being like, I want to win this. It's our own kind of science experiment, realistically.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So I guess with your first prep, right? So your first prep was 2008.
2008, yeah.
Yeah. So like, how did you know what to do to get in shape for a show? Like what did that prep look like? Like, what type of mistakes are we making here?
I didn't prep, and I went in and they were like, geez, how long have you been dieting? I said I had my back on a while ago. It was just my brother kind of convinced me to do the competition because I've been lifting weights for a long time prior to that, and he was looking at the competitors last year and junior. He said, "You definitely win, you definitely win," and I went down anyway. And yeah, people were like impressed, or like, "Geez, how long were you dieting?" So I wasn't dieting. And the same in 2010. I didn't diet. Just shut up because I was doing weights and I was doing loads of sports and
Mm,
boxing and stuff like that. So I was always I was really lean all
mm,
the time. I actually kind of regret doing the whole dirty bulk. I did it at plenty times in the past. It just destroyed my body in terms of like body fat settling point. Like my body fat settling point was percentage wise was so low, and I'm so comfortable
yeah.
and I eat everything. And in order to put on the weight, I had to like get down like 10 meals a day, blend and
Right.
everything. But eventually, when you put on the weight, and you don't own it until you kind of keep it for at least 6 months, and then that's your new body fat setting a point kind of thing. It is. So yeah, like every time then I went to diet to get down to my condition for when I was younger, I'd be back to the condition, but I'd be dying, I'd be starving, and I'd have all the side effects, like get tired and blah blah blah. While before I was like, geez, I was like this before, and I was grand, you know.
Mm,
But
yeah.
so I always kind of recommend to people that are starting off and stuff like that is that don't dirty bulk, just lean and gain, um, just to improve. Yeah, you're going to see the scales go up, but keep monitoring the condition, and yeah, just go with it, because by force feeding is not going to increase your speed of muscle gain. It's like watering plants, or giving plants food and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
know yourself that there's so much that it needs, and anything more is kind of not really doing much else for the
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Like that's a good analogy there. Like the same way like that you could water a plant to feed it. If you give too much water, it's just going to destroy the soil, and that's very much the case when it does come to like gain muscle. Like as you said, there's only a certain amount of calories over your maintenance that you realistically need to actually put on exercise, and then a lot of the extra stuff is going to be dictated towards fat gain. And like you will gain more muscle by having a larger surplus, but you also gain disproportionately more body fat, and
Yeah,
that's the issue for bodybuilding, right? It
this,
doesn't matter how much size you realistically are gaining overall in the off season period. It's how much of that you need to pull off before you get back on stage.
and everyone's different. There's some people I know that can actually get enormous on the off season and hold on to a heap amount of muscle, and then they get down to the competition level and they're just the same.
Yeah.
Just it's kind of have to choose, you know. Yeah, so like it's everyone, but yeah, everyone is slightly different. Like, you get your
Mm,
outlier as well. Like some people just, they can put on very rare instances, they can put on an enormous amount of muscle, and when they're getting lean, they can kind of hold on to the majority of it. Like, so.
mm,
Uh, and then obviously strategy of the person as well, how good of prep they do, and yeah. But yeah, back then it was just I didn't prep. I just was lean because I was doing so much exercise. But when I actually did, I tried to kind of prep. I remember my first proper prep after, like, doing all these bulks and stuff like that, and cutting and stuff like that, and I had a kind of short space of time to make weight, and it was the most horrendous diet. It was like 8 weeks of no carbs, and the only carb source was broccoli. Did you not? So
mostly water.
yeah, yeah, broccoli was the only carb sources. But like at the end, like it's like being in the desert or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like being, like, what Buddha and Jesus going through. But you just go crazy, like, but yeah, it was an experience. But
Mm,
you learn a lot from those kind of experiences, like, but even just to be able to do it, to
yeah.
not touch a carb, and just for 8 weeks, man, it's just, you can get through anything if you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think bodybuilding is one of those sports. I guess like yeah, outsiders looking in just think we're all a bit tapped because it's like the off season setting or like away from competition, your habits can look pretty normal, but then when it gets closer to competition and you are either doing stuff like that where you're dropping carbs out completely, you're doing tons of cardio on a daily basis, and you're almost living like a hermit.
yeah,
Those can be grueling. Now, thankfully, like for my prep, I didn't have to suffer all that much, and this comes back to the individuality of like what a prep can look like. Like you mentioned there, for your first few shows, you didn't diet, but you're already in great shape. You're already in great shape, and that's probably one thing that I think condition standards have improved massively across like the last number of years. So I'd say even though then you were dieted because you were already kind of doing something like boxing and you're already maintaining low level of body fat, like just as you were living, like, you know, you didn't have to really kind of try it. And like I know people like that too, where they could eat whatever they want and they just don't seem to put on any body fat. So that really kind of stands to people in bodybuilding. Like, you look at like Dirk Emmerich. You know, Dirk Emmerich, he always says extremely lean. And from talking to him, I remember he was saying he would have been like having to have mostly liquid meals when he was eating like 3,000 calories. I'm like, bro, to
Wow.
get 3,000 calories and have mostly liquid meals, that's a poor appetite. But you know, it kind
Yeah.
of makes sense because he keeps himself so lean all the time, and the condition he gets in is wild. But for
Yeah.
some people do have it really hard for prepping. Like some people will have to do those like daily cardio, and they could be on the stairmaster or bike for 60 minutes at a time, alongside doing, you know, 15,000 steps, alongside eating below
Yeah.
2,000 calories, 1,500 calories at times, you know. And I guess that's just one of those things that, like, when people are getting into the sport, they have to realize that maybe like that's kind of something they're kind of signing up for, you know, that they're accepting that that's kind of what they need to do. And you probably know yourself from having your shows the last couple of years, it's really like this. How to say, you feel kind of bad for the people who are getting up on stage who just haven't done their homework like that. Maybe they haven't had the right guidance for it, because when you're not in shape on stage, it just really does stand out.
Yeah.
And I think in those kind of contexts, you know, or you get off stage and you have a really kind of good kind of look at, like, okay, what was my strategy there? Some people just don't start dieting early. Like if you're starting dieting now and it's your first show or something like that, and you're competing in September, like, you know, I don't, like, personally, I probably wouldn't compete. Like if I diet, I'm lean enough now, but I still, at my level of leanness, wouldn't compete in September because I'm like, I wouldn't be ready. You know, I think it's something you really have to kind of factor in. Like, what was your first competition where you got like legit shredded?
That time when I did the 8 weeks of
Yeah.
no, yeah, that
What
was in
competition was that for?
that was for UABN. That was 2013 or 14.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's but yeah, like, yeah, I had a good bit of body fat that I had to lose. So, and in the short space of time, and that's when I kind of really got to see good condition. I was told that, like, you know, she was competing in one of the competitions and placed last, and someone said to me that, like, you know, you should be going to the Worlds and the UABN, and I was kind of like, what, you know, came last, like. He said, no, no. He said, you should be going to your World, you know, like, go for the Worlds, like. And I said, all right, so I went for the Worlds anyway, and I came top five, and I was small but disappointed, like. And then someone came up to me, actually, who I know really well, and he's been competing in it for years. And this fella is, Jesus, I look up to him, like, you know, he's
Yeah.
just big, like. And he's like, geez, you've cracked the top five. I've been trying to do this for years.
Mm.
So then I realized, oh yeah, geez, nice one. And I went back then the next time, and I kept going back, and eventually got top three. And then after that, then I got went to that's the next year. Then I went to the Worlds, like. But yeah, those preps, each prep was really hard because, as I said, I increased my body fat settling point. Because, like, if I
Mm.
even know, like, if I wasn't to track my food, my weight would just skyrocket up to average dry weight 97.5, no problem,
Mm.
by just not tracking my food. But that's why I have to track my food. It's like the body never forgets your old body fat settling point, if you know. Yeah, and so, like, every prep I do now is challenging, like. So that's why I kind of try not to get too kind of uh, um, heavy on the off season. No, in 2000, I remember 2022, I would have made a big mistake. I competed in the Mr. Universe, the Pro Universe,
Oh
and
yeah.
I did well. I was in good condition. I was actually really good condition. I could have just kind of left it there and left it at that and improved into the LA. But what did I do? I just kept dieting. I kept dieting, and
Mm.
I got panicked, and I went down to 1,300 calories for like 5 weeks beforehand, and I lost a lot of muscle in my arm and my chest, especially. trying to reach that elite conditioning. And to get that, those extra details, I lost an awful size in my chest and my arms. And then after that, I was like, right, I didn't track, and my weight ballooned straight back up, because it was extreme at the end,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in the old saying in the Tao Te Ching, it's like, if you rush something, it's almost ripe, or something. If you rush it, you ruin it basically. And yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
And and when you don't have a coach either, like, it's kind of just, and I could look back now and look back at the image, it was like, if I could just say to myself, stop, don't diet. I have a picture on my phone, and at the end of July, I'm just like, yeah, you only need one more week and stop. It's always good to have that extra eye, because you can't be, a bit, you need that, what would you call it?
Oversight.
Yeah, huh?
Oversight.
Yeah, oversight. Yeah. And someone with obviously experience to kind of tell you to stop. But yeah, you learn a lot from it, though. You do learn a lot. And for next few shows, then I just kind of went in just to clean everything up. Diet. I took 2023 fairly handy. I wasn't taking it serious. I just said I'll do this. I just kind of get down to a good condition so I can prep myself for 2024. And geez, 2023, I was like, because it was a relaxed prep, and I wasn't, say for example, I wasn't losing weight rapidly enough, and my calories are so low, and I was like, geez, I have so much weight to lose now, and I'm just going to continue and plow on. But then I said to myself, look, you're not taking this seriously, so don't worry about it. And I actually ate more, and that's when I started losing weight, and more relaxed prep. And I was like, wow, I can get really lean and make it way, way easier for myself. And I was like, geez, this is the easiest prep ever. And 2004, then I did the same. This is fantastic, so easy. And this year now, I'm actually going to go for my previous conditioning, but try to be a bit more strategic and try to hold on to the muscle that I tend to lose near the end. So yeah, look, there's easy ways of doing things, and there's hard ways of doing things. And I find that, like, being kind of in like that bodybuilding kind of background that we're used to back in the days, like, everything's like hardcore.
Yeah.
Push yourself to the limit. You need to be feeling pain. You don't, like, there's a certain amount, but you don't have to burn yourself. You know what I mean? But sorry, you want to say something there?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, the strategy is very important for getting shredded, because I think a lot of the information that still goes around and that people come into some preps with comes from, like, the untested side of things. And even the untested side of things, they're changing their approach to preps after seeing how lean natural guys are getting, and getting more information as well, like, on how, like, they should be operating with their cycles and stuff like that. But, like, when you have a short prep, which was typically the thing done in, like, the IFBB circles and, like, the untested ranks, they would kind of give themselves that 8 to 12 week diet before prep. Like, that was just prep. Prep was 8 to 12 weeks, maybe up to 16, and that 16 weeks would be a long prep for them, And what they'd have to do then to get in that condition is they'd have to push cardio really hard, they'd have to push calories really low, but they could do that because they had things in there to help them preserve muscle. They had things in there to help them preserve hormonal function and stuff like that, right? So we don't have that as naturals, so we almost need to go slower. And, like, anytime I'm talking to people who are competing, and I'm asking them, okay, like, when are you starting your diet, whatever, and they say, like, into summer or stuff like that, I say, you got to start earlier. Like, ultimately at the end of the day, it's not just a fat loss contest. It's like a muscle preservation contest. It's a bodybuilding contest. Like, you're meant to be up on stage with the most amount of muscle, and the harder it feels, the harder it feels to a degree, right? Especially if it's hard for a long period of time, the probably worse you're gonna look up on stage, because you're probably going to be chipping away at a lot of muscle tissue, and kind of once you start kind of creeping into, that feeling where you feel like you're on death's door, like the final few weeks before competition. Generally at that point, like, all your hormones are just, like, in the gutter, and that's where you don't want to spend too long there. So if we can go with like longer preps, we're talking 25, 35 weeks, and people who are listening to that may like hear that and say, geez, that's too long to diet. I couldn't diet for that long. But it's like the first number of weeks of that diet, you shouldn't feel like you're dieting. Like it should feel as if you're just eating a little bit less calories. It's only as you get closer to your shows that you'll feel, okay, now I'm starting to feel the fatigue set in. Maybe you get a little bit more hungry. But like, it's the difference between you doing, God, if I had to choose between doing 35 weeks uh, at the calories I'm currently on, which are like 3,000, right, to lose body fat, versus if I had to do it in 12 weeks, but I had to do it on 2,000, 1,800. I'm picking the longer time span all day long. Because
Yeah.
again, just that, the slog for those couple of weeks would be incredibly tough,
Yeah.
and that makes adherence to the diet harder. It makes your posing sessions harder. Makes muscle retention harder. Your training sessions are just not going to feel as good. Yeah, you also want to be looking forward to the process. You want to be looking forward to getting up there in the day, and the more you've had to suffer to get up there doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it more. It could just mean that you're looking forward to being over quicker. So what did it look like when you won your pro card? Like how did that come back? Did you win it over in the States for WMBF Worlds, or
Yeah, I
how did you win
won
it?
in Boston, won in the States. Yeah, so to compete in the MBFI first and then got to the Worlds, and yeah, I didn't think, I was delighted to win the Worlds, but I wasn't thinking about pro card or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
and then they said, "Oh, you're pro and you're first pro now, and congratulations." I was like, "Oh, yeah, nice one." There's nothing, in terms of like the way things are, people looking for it now, like, because
Mm,
there were people even saying to me, you don't have to take it now if you don't want to. I'm like, okay, I probably won't. So, and then someone came over to me then, and they were like, "Wow, you're the
yeah,
first
yeah.
person," and he was saying like, you're this and that, and your man's attitude then kind of changed. But like, I was like, "Oh yeah, cool," and he said they were saying that like, that usually when you become pro, you start from the bottom, but he said, "Look, you're not starting from the bottom. You're going to be good." Like, and I was happy to hear that. But yeah, that's kind of how it worked, and that's when I actually proposed to Lil as well.
Oh,
That
nice.
yeah, I did inkling that I was going to win the worlds because the guy that I used to see showed, I said, "Oh, this is condition. I'm going in for the UIBBN." He'd always tell me exactly what place I'd make a place, and he was
Mm,
always right. Like, and this guy, was he taught me a lot of things, and he was he said that, what way do you look? I showed him, and he said, "Yeah, it's grand. You're going to win." And they said, I was like, "Oh," all right." And he said, "If you don't win, give it up because it's all politics." That's what he said to me. I said, "All right, fair enough." I went anyway, and I had that inkling that I was going to win, just because of him, because I had no confidence in myself. So when he said that, I kind of had that thought, and then before I left, I said, "Look," to the woman in the hotel. I was like, "Look, get a bunch of flowers there, would you? And I'll pay for it to put up into the room." And I was all full of tan when I came back, and we had the trophy, and she was there, Lil was there, and she said, "Oh, go for a shower there now." And I said, "No, you can go for a shower first." I went, "What do you mean? You look at the stadium, you go for a shower first." I said, "No, no, go in for a shower." And she went for a shower, and I got all the petals and the
Yeah,
roses and the flowers,
lovely.
and I put the ring then on that trophy, and I was like, "You wouldn't mind marrying me very much." Like Rocky Balboa or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was it was a great day. And actually, when we went back to Boston, we went back to the places that we were, where I proposed and stuff like that, and this hotel that was supposedly haunted. Jeez, I'd say it was haunted because we were asleep, and I remember waking up and hearing someone in the toilet, and it was like to flush the toilet, and I was like, I didn't say anything. And then she said something about someone being in the toilet and all that. I was just like, what? But this place, anyway, there's meant to be loads of stuff going on for years. But we went down there, we had a coffee. We wanted after the show, we said we'd get a Domino's pizza because I remember we getting a Domino's pizza in 2007 in Boston when I won it. And it was the best pizza I've ever had. It was unbelievable. But I went back to Boston and get Domino's, and it was terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess the after a show, it always tastes way better. Anything that first post show, anything tastes
Yeah,
next level.
it was. Oh yeah, it does. It was. Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. So was there anything you did differently coming into that prep, or was it just kind of business as usual in regards to your
Uh,
approach for that one?
I kind of stayed lean throughout that year. So when I went for the competitions to qualify for it, like I didn't really have to diet as much. You know, it was a short kind of. And then when I went from there, then to the worlds, I went all out. Like like I
Hmm.
normally do. Like it's an hour cardio in the morning, hour in the evening, training in the middle of the day, and that was throughout the whole prep, and it was at very low calories. That's the way I always did my preps because I always had very low calorie intake to make it, but I didn't have to do that, if you get me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like how you were saying there earlier that the digging phase there at the end and stuff like that. When people talk about digging phase, and I'd be going through these
It's always
preps.
a digging phase.
Yeah, and I was like, when is this digging phase going to happen? I feel like death all the time. And I was like thinking to myself, when I get to the close to the end, then I'm going to be like gone, like, and I'm just like, no, I'm still feeling terrible throat. So the digging phase starts at the start.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
too
yeah,
stubborn. I just kept going. I'd like stupid attitude. I'd never have a cheat meal. I'd never have a refeed. But by God, they're a miracle. Like I don't care what anyone says. Law of thermodynamics and all that, they work and they're good.
yeah. Well, I mean, like there is a decent amount of like kind of work showing the benefits of using things like refeeds
Yeah,
for like during a diet to well, obviously help break up the monotony of the psychological burden of having to stick to a diet for a number of weeks, and then as well, like even in the context of like you're prepping for a bodybuilding show. If you are running like a 2-3 day refeed or something like that, or a diet break, you can kind of trial like a peak. You can see what your physique is going to look like before you get on stage, and kind of try out like kind of different food sources that seem to be working well, or even just like different like approaches. Whether that's like the you take your pictures the start of the week and then see what they look like at the end of the week after you do your refeed, or then you take your pictures a couple of days after refeed, see okay, does this would a front load work better for you, or back load work better for you, or whatever, or there if you're doing like a full diet break for a week, you say okay, could this look like something like a kind of a linear load, or just allowing your body to come back up to full maintenance, and see if that would be the best look to have your physique look better. So you're kind of serving a number of different goals at
yeah,
once. And I think this is also what they kind of having that timeline comes into it, like the longer timeline, because like the longer you have your timeline, the more opportunity you have to kind of have these little kind of intermittent periods of bringing your food up, and as well letting your foot off the gas. Because like if you diet all the way straight into a show, you probably won't look as good as you could if you were maybe like ready like 2 weeks early or something like that, and you're able to just kind of like ease off a little bit. And again, you're not getting ready 2 weeks early if you start 8 weeks out.
yeah. The guy from most of my competitions, I never did really like the whole protocol of a peak week. It was always diet all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's all I used to ever do until competing properly
And pros.
in the pros. Then I'm kind of like, okay, you can't get away with just getting conditioned. And
Yeah.
yeah, you need to get the fullness as well. So I'm only kind of getting into that now. So I still have a bit of learning to do, and I have to do practice the kind of a um. I won't be doing the kind of a peak week this week. This year, sorry. I'll be kind of doing, as you said, practice on those. I suppose that is a peak week, really. But practice on those high calorie days and see what's better, front load or back load, and I can kind of experiment and find out what's the best. It's,
Mm.
but then again, when it comes to the show, like you can do all the practice, but your body can act differently,
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
body holds water at different periods. And I feel that your body holds water and it releases it sometimes without you wanting to do. Like it's like that film of water between your skin and your muscle is it kind of over time it fills up, and it gets to saturation point, and it reduces, and you're dry as a bone. But then
Mm.
it starts to increase. But it's like a natural process. You can't kind of
Yeah.
manipulate, and it's kind of like I'm just hoping that when on show day, that's the day that all that water's released, and then
Yeah.
stand on stage,
Yeah, it's trying to manage like the stress side of things.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm
because
no good at that.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
because like yeah, as you said, you can do all the kind of trial peaks and refeeds and stuff like that when you're going through the peak itself, but you're doing those in conditions where you don't have nerves thrown into it, and you're getting to the deadline, and all the work is done. Like that, the hardest days for me, to be honest, were the weeks where I was actually kind of leading into a show. Like the 1 to 2 days out, or like the show day. Like I just find it so hard to sit still and
yeah,
keep myself calm,
and sleep.
and that and like I've heard Chris Aceto, so he was Jay Cutler's coach, and he'd say you could wear yourself out at first place. Like, you could literally stress yourself out of winning the competition on the day of, So I guess like to be honest, I didn't find a solution for keeping myself calm.
Yeah,
So I can't tell anybody else, but that's definitely going to be my mission now across like the next few years is try to find that out, because the guys like you've met like a lot of like the pro bodybuilders now, like so
yeah,
many of them are so chill. Like meeting Alberto Nunez, like he was uh probably the most relaxed person I've seen ever before getting up on a pro stage. I was
yeah,
talking to him the day before the Worlds we did in 2022. Yeah, it's the day before, and I was like, oh, any plans for the evening, or what's the peak looking like today? And he was like, oh, I don't know. Cynthia is looking to get some pizza, so I think I'll go out with her and have a slice or two. It's just
yeah,
like most people haven't like would freak out at the
yeah.
thought of like having to go into a pizzeria.
Oh
Never
yeah,
mind eat them before the show, and he
yeah,
ended up like coming third, and looking as good as ever. And
yeah,
obviously, like just obviously the metabolic aspect of that, but like he's just a chill guy. Like like if you have the pizza and you allow it to stress you out, you know, and
yeah,
you wait and you start thinking, oh, I'm gonna hold lots of water, you're probably going to stress yourself into doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
So
yeah, no,
yeah, I thought it was
he's a
interesting.
genius. He's a genius. I've followed him for years. Big fan of him. Yeah, so like he's the reason why likes all these people are getting such good condition. Like he's one of the big reasons. Like, and even the enhanced bodybuilders are in contact with him and everything. He's a wealth of knowledge. Like got in contact with him as well just to ask him a few questions and stuff like that. Like genius. To be honest.
Yeah, I think he's extremely kind of obviously extremely aware of his own body because he's able to prep without tracking. But he also seems to be just a master of knowing when to push and when to pull,
Yeah,
which I think that's the kind of art of getting on stage as big as he can, as lean as he can.
he
I
makes the
think
most
that's
sense as
yeah,
well. He makes the most sense. Like like
yeah,
the best. Like sometimes I suppose the stuff that sounds really really good, it's not. It's kind of like that's the risky stuff. Like you're like, oh, that's when you can kind of spill over, or you can bet your best luck or stuff like that. But why not play it safe, like he says, just get to your condition and then reverse into a show. That's the real
yeah,
best outcome. I know you can't do that for your first show, but near towards your end of your shows, it's probably best to just get to the condition you need to and then just reverse into that, and don't worry about peak weeks or anything like that. Just get yourself out of that hole and just maintain what you have and just increase bit by bit, and just and through that process you're going to freshen up and you're going to be full anyway, and you're just
mhm,
going to have a better outcome no matter what, like, unless you
yeah,
do some drastic things at the end, like, but if you don't, even if you're a really stressed person, like, it should work, like,
yeah, yeah. Well, keeping it simple in that final week should be the goal. I think there's different contexts where a backload or would work better in the front load, but then there's also context where the front load work better in the back load. But kind of what you're kind of mentioning there would be something like like a reverse dieting, I guess you could say in show, but like a lot of the bodybuilding coaches would call it linear loading now. So you're essentially just like gradually bringing your carbs up as you get into the show, up
yeah,
to almost like a point of maintenance. And once you kind of find the point where your physique is looking its best, that's what you just need to kind of sustain until show day. It's not complicated because I think one of the kind of biggest issues with doing something like a front load or back load is people are having all these expectations as to what they're going to look like from like day 1 to day 3. And then as well, just those massive kind of shifts in kind of food volume can cause issues with people's digestion and even
Yeah.
adherence to perspective, because like if they're just like not overeating, but they're eating a ton more food relative to what they usually have, maybe on those days they'll also notice that their hunger is actually way higher
Mm.
than they actually anticipate it to be, even higher than what they feel on like a dieting day, because they're actually allowing their body to kind of feed up. And then there's just the variability of getting on stage, like, will you look the way you want to on show day? Like
Yeah.
there's a aspect of kind of gambling with it, and the more variables you play with. And that's one thing that I was really surprised with when I did your show in WMBF Ireland, and talking to some of the competitors backstage, and like you still have like lads who are like, cutting salt and cutting water for like could be up to 24 hours, like, just like not drinking any water, and you're like, there's
Yeah.
probably a reason why you're looking kind of flat, like
Yeah.
you're not getting vasculars. Like these are things that a lot of the kind of bodybuilding kind of sphere kind of moving away from in terms of
It,
like peaking competition.
it's funny because if you look back on even do you know the Arnold Schwarzenegger encyclopedia? If
Yeah, I
you
haven't read it personally. Maybe I
Yeah,
should.
like if you like I didn't I was reading at the start and of years ago back when I was a teenager, and I was just like, you to try their training routine, and you just find out very fast that you're overtraining, and you get worse, just too much training, and you get weaker, and then you kind of, oh, this doesn't make sense, and then you kind of push it aside. But if you pick it up again and look at it at the back of it where they're talking about preps, and Arnold Schwarzenegger himself said he did many lectures, like, and that a long time ago, many seminars saying not to cut water, not to carb load at the end, like trying to get all those carbs in at the very end. And all the stuff that is still happening now, he was trying to teach people not to do back then. He would say,
Mm,
like, keep the salt, the water, don't cut the water, because your muscles need water, blah blah. All the science that they're talking about today. But even back then, they had it. But
yeah,
do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like a thing that's always been there, that cut water and dehydrate and all this kind of stuff, like,
Mm,
and carb load at the very last minute. But even in the book, you said, like, it's you've too little time, too little, too late. You're not going to be able to absorb those carbs in that space of time.
yeah,
You
yeah.
need at least week. He'd even say at least minimum or 2 weeks of being into the show, which is mad.
Mm,
And then another book, then the old school books as well have good information, good knowledge. The Joe Weider Encyclopedia. So there was like even talking about diets then. They said if you're like we all make this mistake where like you cut calories big time, and after your first week you're like, oh man, I didn't lose weight. I'm actually up a little bit. What the hell is going on here? You cut calories again,
yeah.
and you're kind of cutting calories the whole time, and you're left with nothing. But it was even even on that book. It says, give it 2 weeks. Give at least 2 weeks. Don't change when you do a calorie take off. Give it 2 weeks. And Albert Nunez goes even further, 3 weeks. And
Mm,
for females, 4 weeks, which makes a lot of sense because as you know, your body does fluctuate in water
yeah,
intake and stuff like that. But like if you do it that way and you prep long term, it's an easy prep and it's really enjoyable. But if you're trying to get to that stage and you're not losing weight and you drop again and you drop again, you're going to get to the point where, like, you're going to binge or something like that. Or if you're like me, in nutcase, you just saying too stubborn, no, I'm going to stick at these calories and go through the whole lot, and then your body is destroyed then.
yeah.
So, like, yeah, there's so much knowledge out there now, and people have all that access. No wonder people are getting so conditioned.
Yeah, yeah. I think a kind of big kind of lesson for people who are getting on stage is like anything that we talk about here in regards to like the peaks and stuff like that, and peak week and whatever, manipulating carbs or water or whatever, is if you're not in conditioning, it doesn't matter, because like, as per a lot of your experiences, right? You mentioned you just dieted straight into a show, did well, all these kind of practices that you did yourself. you didn't need them because you were in shape, you know. And I think that is just something that, especially at the amateur level, if you're in shape, you stand out because it's the people who are in proper condition, like, you know, they have, and this is not like, you know, you have developed abs. You know, the abs are fucking, you know, they're assumed you'll have them, you know. But like we're talking about, like, are your legs striated? You know, definitely now the condition standards getting up to, you know, have you got lines? Have you got some lines through your glutes? You know, have you got shoulder striations? All these different areas you're looking to have like genuinely peeled. If that's you on stage, you're going to stand out. Like, especially the amateur level, like that could be enough to kind of get like a top three placing for sure, if not win it. But if you are not getting to those kind of levels of conditioning, like doing a peak week is just not really necessary, because what a lot of people who are new to the sport will do with a peak week is they think that this is going to be the thing that gets off that little bit extra bit fat or makes them pop that little bit more. And realistically, it's just the case they just need more time to diet, you know, um, which is it's a hard lesson to learn if that's the position you find yourself in, but it's a mistake you won't make again. So, you know, I think that's a really important piece for people to keep in mind if you're getting ready for shows this September. So, I guess I haven't really asked you much about your training, but so I want to kind of go into that
Yeah.
for a little bit. So, how's your training looked across like the last number of years?
I suppose I always I've done a lot of typical hit, you know, the
Mike Menser.
movements and all that, like it. But there's only like, yeah, like, and it's good, it works, but there comes a point where, you know, um, I kind of have a mixture of everything. There comes a point where the stimulus for an exercise with the hit approach at a certain strength and all that kind of stuff, there's too much of a time to recover.
Mm,
And if you give yourself that time to recover, the appropriate time at a certain level, you kind of become detrained. So that's where volume has to come in. So I know like people are stuck to their one approach, but like that hit training has its purpose, but volume also has its purpose, you know. So like you have to have a kind of a balance of all of them. Now at the start, yeah, hit training you can do that for everything for a long time, and it depends too on injuries and stuff like that. Like, you know, volume might be the only way. So, and I think every muscle group kind of recovers differently as well for different people. You know, your recovery ability from one muscle group to the next is different. So you gotta find out things for yourself and write down basically everything, you know.
mm,
And the way my training is at the moment is kind of have like a kind of a mixture of that kind of stuff. So if I start a new movement, it's kind of like I could potentially do a bit of volume, and I can actually reduce the volume over time and Mike Mensah kind of stuff for a while, and then I'd actually go back to volume, and then I'd kind of go from there and, you know, just keep improving. But that volume will always have a part of where there's that hit again, because
mm,
I want to go back to that just for one, but then I'll obviously deload and I'll continue on with a new volume, you know. So that's kind of how things work, and it depends on. I think I have a good few injuries at the moment, and built up over the years that certain movements I can't do, and I kind of just have to do what I can at the moment, like, you know. But
mm.
but no, as far as injuries for this year though, it's good. It's good, like, you know. I've compared to last year, I have a good few injuries last year for the first time. Just getting older now and going turning 35 now in September, so kind of the mileage is going up, like. But yeah, that's kind of my training, kind of a balance of those, and I write down everything, like. Actually, I just checked there. I'll show you 2 seconds. This is a collection of books of my training, right? And I have more downstairs, right? From 2000 and
Wow.
2013. Logged
Yeah.
every training thing. And then
For anybody who is listening, Finbar has just brought out about fucking 30 40
There's
logbooks.
more downstairs. But I compiled the whole lot, and in lockdown I went over all my notes and stuff like that as well, and find out like really dig into it and find out what really works and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
what works for me I'll stick to. And yeah, look, with social media and stuff online and stuff like that will kind of make you move on and do something else, and you'll always come back and say, geez, that doesn't work, and then you go back to doing your own thing and you're like, geez, this is fucking brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
So like I just stick to my own thing now. I just don't I try to not get influenced by
Mm.
outside
But
sources.
yeah, I think that kind of speaks to, you know, the time that you kind of started training at and the time that I kind of started training at as well. It's like I don't get persuaded that much on, you know, kind of new training stuff that comes out because it all happens in cycles anyway. Like every couple of years, you're going to hear people talk about high intensity training. Every couple of years, you're going to hear people talk about volume, training with volume, and one is always going to be hotter than the other, and there's always going to be fucking new takes, new spiels, new people pushing like, you know, their high intensity program or their volume program or whatever it may be, and that's also then going to be like, you know, depending on what the best IFBB pro or the best influencer is doing too, that's going to become the kind of big thing. And I think it's like one of those things that, like, you know, the older you get and the longer you've been training, the more opportunity you've had to try different things. Like my early years of training, I tried lots of different approaches, and then you stumble upon an approach that like you seem to get the best results for. You just do that, and like kind of like you have there all your logbooks. Like I have the exact same. And once you're kind of getting into that kind of rhythm, you don't. It's hard to get distracted by noise because you can see what you're doing is working. Like fair
Yeah.
enough. Like if you're following an approach and you're giving it time and you're not seeing results, for sure look for new information and look to learn how you can do things better.
Mm.
But if you're making gains, like you don't need, and it's so simple really at the heart
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
You know, like it's a case of we need to be pushing our training, like, you know, relatively close to failure. We need to do this for a long period of time. You know, bodybuilders train all our muscle groups. You know, find your
Yeah.
favorite movement for those muscle groups
Yeah.
and just get strong as fuck over time. Like, you know, and as per you said, like, you know, over time, as you get bored, you can switch between like doing a more higher volume approach, or if, you know, injuries pop up or something like that. You know, you can switch from a higher volume approach to a more high intensity approach. You can, if you get bored of doing leg press, you do a squat for a few blocks or something like that. You know,
Yeah.
it is so simple really at the heart of it. But I think the kind of biggest issues that probably a lot of young lifters face right now, or people getting into sport, is that shiny object syndrome and thinking that there's going to be one way for them to train. Like one podcast I love, I don't know if you listen to it, the Longevity Muscle podcast.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard a few things off of yeah, he interviews.
Yeah, he interviews mainly like natural bodybuilders, and
Yeah.
like it's so interesting to hear between all of the different people how different their training is.
Yeah.
Like some people, I think he's interviewing a guy from the UK. I think he could be one of like the founding members of the UK DFBA or something like that. And he was saying that like he doesn't train. Like he doesn't train. No, he definitely does train. No, he's never tracked the workout. He's never tracked the workout.
Yeah, you don't
And
have
when
to.
he goes to train, he just goes in and he's like, "What do I want to do first today?" You know,
Yeah.
and he's got to a really high level with it. You know, and that is so counterculture to how so many of us tell people to go about the training, because
Yeah.
for most people that doesn't work, and that's kind of represented by every
Yeah.
single other person who's in the gym who's not in shape. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but there were like, say for example, with him there was like certain aspects that would be similar to other bodybuilders. He was like, while he didn't track, while he didn't like have like a kind of set exercise program, every time he went in there he fucking obliterated himself. You know, outside the gym he's looking after his recovery. So, you know, he like there's one thing being standardized there, and he's like he is making some progress. He's just not having it written down in like an Excel sheet with a nice
Yeah.
little graph beside it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But
So
I suppose the powerlifting that you've done too, like, and the powerlifting is a really good tool because you find out how you're going to get stronger, and the only way you're going to get bigger naturally is by getting stronger.
yeah.
I know there's neurological and everything like that, like, but for you to get stronger, there has to be some physical as well, like, you know, it can't be just all neurological.
Yeah.
But you learn a lot of principles from that, and you apply that then to your muscle groups, different muscle groups. You're like powerlifting, but for all your muscle groups. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which in the simplest format, like simply you just getting a stimulation in the muscle, and once you get that stimulation, that's all you need. And for some people, they need more volume. Some people need less, and it depends on how intense that person trains as well.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah. For
people
sure.
train really intense that one set is enough, and but that's kind of more kind of for like like the stronger you are, the harder it is for your body to recover. So
Hmm.
I need to think about that too. And you hear stories like the science and stuff like that saying that volume and this and that, but like it all depends on like you could be really efficient at doing a specific exercise, and that exercise you're really good at connecting to the muscle, and you really cause a fantastic stimulation from a set or two sets or whatever like that, and you don't need any more. But like if you reduce the intensity and leave some reps in reserve, yeah, you can do a lot more volume. Do you know? Like
Hmm.
I've like Bruce Lee, you don't just do one, you do lots of methods and do you know what I mean? And they all
Yeah.
work. There's thousands of ways to skin a cat, and you know whatever someone's doing in the gym, you can't really kind of um judge them, because later on you might be doing the same thing and you'd be like, oh, that's the reason why they were doing that, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's as long as you're creating the stimulus and you're recovering, you're getting stronger, you're improving,
Mm.
and if you're not, there's something going wrong, there's something happening there. And yeah, it is good. It's good to track, but it's also good to be flexible with the tracking. That one, like if one machine is taken one day and you're
Yeah.
just like you're stuck for time, it's not the end of the world. You can do something else, But before you want to stick at that one thing, you want to make sure this is improving. But all that happens really sometimes is when you stick to one exercise too long, either can end up getting an injury. Yeah, you can get phenomenally strong, like unbelievably strong. People kind of looking, how the heck you lifting that? And you're
Mm.
just like, because I've been adding the tiniest bit to it each time,
Yeah.
and or like I've been programming it in a certain way. But you leave that exercise, do something else, come back to that in a few months, and you're starting from scratch again, like.
Yeah.
So it's you're only kind of priming the muscle too in terms of the neurological system, like the neurons that you're probably at the start you're hitting like 60% and it goes up to close to 100. And look, I found too, when you get to that plateau, and if you push against the plateau, obviously you regress, and then if you push again, you get injured.
Yeah.
But I found that like if you get to a point of that plateau and you're at the regression phase, and you find the formula to get past that regression phase by extra recovery and all that, yeah, you'll get stronger, but the tendon will snap. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like your body
Yeah.
just hits that 100% mark, and your weakest link will just,
Mm.
and you're like, okay, what's the point? Just either go to something else very similar to that movement, or actually go back, take a week off, 2 weeks off, and go back to the very start of that program and build it back up.
Yeah. I think that's something you definitely learn by getting to those periods where you're kind of hitting that plateau, where you're hitting a little bit of regression. That even if you take a deload, you shouldn't be going back from, like, if you finish blocking week 6 or something like that. When you take a deload, you shouldn't be using week 6 weight.
Yeah,
Like, I always explain to clients, it's like two sets of steps, and like on the second set of steps, it's just elevate a little bit more. If you're doing a 6 week program, or maybe program, whatever it may be, for week 1 to week 8, you're assuming you're gonna have like progressions every single time. But then you take your deload, you go back down to the bottom of the next step. But that first step is elevated a little bit. So
yeah,
the weight you may use in week 1 of that block now is probably the weight you used either week 2 or week 3 from the previous block.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
something you've hit before, but it's gonna feel a lot easier now because you should have made the adaptations. But now, by the time you get to the end of this next 8 week block, you should be able to kind of finish it off on like a little bit of a PV, or maybe even like the last 2 weeks you may be able to hit some type of PV. This was just one way to ensure that you're kind of managing, I guess, your kind of training stress over a long period of time. Because yeah, as you mentioned, like if you take a deload, whether that's you take time off, you reduce your volume, you reduce your intensity, whatever way you want to do it, you will feel a little bit suppressed from a strength perspective, and that's okay because you're not meant to be peaked all the
Oh,
time. Like when you get to the end of a training block, you are peaked. You're not doing a powerlifting competition, but your neurological adaptations are likely kind of maxed out at that point. And once you kind of let go of kind of doing the movement and kind of reduce that down, you can maybe kind of have a little bit of an elevation, similar way a powerlifter would for like a week. But then if you continue going on, that's kind of when you start to notice these kind of like negative kind of things popping up.
yeah,
So again, I think that's it's just something that you gain with experience, and you know,
yeah, tracking.
you don't get it's important as a bodybuilder, you don't get attached to like the loads you lift. Like it's nice to lift big heavy weights and for the gym to be looking at you and stuff, but like it's not the goal. Like that's one thing that when I actually did my season 2022, I remember chatting to some of the guys backstage, and I was doing powerlifting at the time, was pretty strong. And I've seen these guys look fucking huge, like massive legs, massive arms. And we chatted about their training. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I'm way stronger than these guys. Like these guys here doing fucking 120 kilo RDLs, I mean, do 200 kilos, but they had bigger hamstrings. I'm like, okay, so it doesn't matter if I'm lifting more weight than them. There's a it's not a weightlifting competition. No judges ask you up on stage here. Who has the biggest deadlift out of like you? No, they just want to see how fucking thick and dense your erectors are and how fucking big your glutes are.
Yeah, as you said, to say genetics reign supreme. Some people
Yeah.
are like my buddy never squatted in his life, and his quads are huge.
Yeah.
Big muscle bellies, full muscle bellies. Same with his calves. He likes to go running, but he's a slow runner because his calves are too big. You try to get him smaller.
Yeah.
No, and then the likes of me then train my calves since I was a child. They're not massive calves and they're tiny. So like
Yeah.
yeah, but you can always improve on what you have
Yeah,
slightly.
for sure.
But genetics do reign supreme sometimes.
We have a bit of time left here, so I want to talk through WMBF in Ireland. So how did you get the WMBF to come to Ireland? Because I know for the longest time the NBFI had been like the main kind of body
Yeah.
for natural bodybuilding. So how do you come about getting the WMBF over?
Yeah, so I think the NBFI they were affiliated with them. That's why I went back and competed with them because I wanted to go to WMBF. And then they went. I think they actually were affiliated for a small period with UIBBN. I think it was only for a year though. And then they had the WMBF, and then they're gone to PNBA. They're
Yeah.
affiliated with them, and that's when we got contacted, and we got the opportunity, and um, yeah, we said give it a try anyway, and luckily, if it wasn't for Lil, like we wouldn't be here, honestly, yeah, she's brilliant, like I'm
An
just
honest man.
yeah, exactly. But no, she's unbelievable. I'm amazed how good she's at all that kind of stuff, like and yeah, we just kind of tried it for the first year, and then the second year it grew. We were delighted, and it's kind of grown ever since. This year is it seems a bit quieter so far in terms of competitors. But no, it might be a good thing for people to hear that because they might want to compete because the standard last year was so big. It might
Yeah.
be putting a lot of people off, like because I noticed that people kind of shy away now because they want their win. They want to win,
More
and
than they want to compete
yeah, like
against the
I
best.
think it's better to have a good competition and compete, and then because then you have more hunger then for the year
Yeah.
season to push and improve. But yeah, the standard was so high last year. It was like look at like Martin he won the worlds in the UIBB, and he was unfortunate because it was the only time they didn't give a pro card for winning the worlds in the WMBF, and Martin won it, and he's a pro standard, like he's
Yeah, he's
unbelievable.
class.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and he came third. Do you know what I mean? That's how
Mm.
high the standard was. It's unbelievable. He is pro. He's world class. He's pro. Like,
Yeah.
not. Do you know what I mean? He should be. Yeah, he's brilliant. But that's just to tell you, like, and then the guy who won the overalls and his
Christoph,
yeah,
yeah,
stuff like
he's a
he
freak.
remind me of like a bigger version of Brian Whittaker at the time.
Yeah, yeah. His conditioning is outrageous.
His legs conditioning
Yeah,
is really like even now in the off season his legs are like really
yeah.
good, like and yeah, really good genetics there in the legs.
Have you got many international competitors coming over this year?
No, no, not really. No.
Not at the moment. Okay, so yeah, I guess if you're an Irish listener and you're looking to compete in WMBF, this could be your chance because I guess like probably one of the biggest things that I noticed from last year, um, was the fact that there's a lot of international competitors there because you
Pro.
can win your you
Yeah.
can win your pro card at it, right?
Yeah.
So that like it's it's not like a national event if you know what I mean. So it's not like a you have to be Irish to compete here. It's an open competition. So somebody could come from Spain to do it the same way I could go over to Spain and compete with WMBF Spain,
Yeah.
and I guess like the WMBF pro card probably be one of the more highly prized pro cards that there is in actual bodybuilding because of like the testing standards, and then as well they're huge over in the States,
Yeah.
and the definitely from being at different shows too, the standard of judging, and then as well how much time you give athletes on stage is really important because there's nothing worse than when you are prepping for again half a year and you get up on stage and you're given like less than 5 minutes and you shoot off,
Yeah.
which I saw at some
Of
competitions this year already, um, which is shite,
if there's their only show that they're doing, that'd be
yeah,
really like.
yeah. And again as well, like if you are somebody who wants overtime to compete against the best, like this is the best place to do it. Like
Yeah.
I'm obviously a little bit biased because it's the organization that came from the people I started following initially, like the likes of the 3DMJ crew.
Yeah.
But even from having been at something like the National Olympia, so when Emma did the National Olympia, I went to that, and then 2 weeks later, or a week later, we were at WMBF Worlds, and the difference in show quality and show standard judging, night and day difference. Like in terms of like WMBF Worlds was much better.
Yeah.
People were given the appropriate amount of time on stage. Classes weren't rushed. They didn't have classes just that seemed to be there for the sake of like making money. And as well, the actual stage is good, right? Because I think that's a really important consideration for a bodybuilding show. Like the stage in New Ross has decent lighting. It's a nice theater venue,
Yeah, I'd
and I
love to
think
be there.
yeah, and that's really important for bodybuilding shows because like again, like I'm not trying to shit on National Olympia here, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I think it's a little bit more kind of overhyped than people that it should be. But it was in a hotel conference room. If the
Yeah.
competitors are the same color as the wall, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that shouldn't be a thing, and it shouldn't be like overhead lighting like a hotel conference room. It
Mm.
should be just like bringing out the best in somebody's physique there. So again, if you're looking to compete at the highest level, I definitely would recommend kind of going towards WMBF. Again, standard on stage in terms of actual competitors, quality of the show, how you'll be treated. Like it's kind of second. And then as well, everybody's getting drug tested.
That's
Everybody's getting polygraphed.
yeah.
Yeah. So like if you want to compete in a federation that really cares about natural status, then that's the one I'd push people towards. Okay, there's one or two more questions here I want to ask you.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, go ahead.
Hijack that there at the end. Oh, got two people here, right? One person's just starting off in bodybuilding. Okay,
Yeah.
what would be the most important piece of advice that you could give them?
Jesus, tough one. I'll regret no later because I'll be like, I should have said this and I should have said that.
Whatever comes to your mind first. That's usually what your heart is trying to tell you.
Jeez, nothing's coming to the head. It's just blank. The best advice for someone starting off. When you're saying starting off, would it be kind of like for a competition, like going for
Yeah, they like no, not for a competition. They just want to get it. They want to get into bodybuilding, and they
into
want to,
bodybuilding
yeah, compete in the future.
and compete in the future? Yeah. Okay. First one would be don't complain when you're feeling that you're not progressing because I'm telling you, you're progressing faster than you ever will, and enjoy it. Try to enjoy it, because it's happening, and you will get to the stage where, you're not going to see it happen. Well, you still feel like you're not seeing it happen, but just take your progress pictures every couple of weeks and try to kind of just try to enjoy that process, and don't be hard on yourself, and don't be worrying about what the next person's doing. As long as you're getting stronger, you're improving, and don't basically dirty bulk, and just stay within, stay lean. I'm not saying to get leaner, stay lean, improve, increase. As your body weight's increasing, assess your conditioning, try to keep it similar. Don't go too far down the other side and put on too much body fat. That's my advice.
Perfect. All right. Final one. All right. What would be a piece of advice for anybody getting ready for the shows in September? What's something that has stood out to you from your last few years of running WMBF Ireland? Something you think competitors could do a little bit better with?
Oh yeah, geez, they're doing really well, no fairness. I suppose make sure you're dark enough for the stage, because the lighting can be strong. So just make sure you're dark enough and be on time, so that you're not stressed, and try to keep stress levels to a minimum, and just enjoy the day, have a chat with the people backstage. They're all there having fun, trying to relax you. Remember that, and yeah, just enjoy the day.
Awesome. All right. All right. Thanks very much for coming on, Finbarr. So, yeah, we'll see you on stage in September sometime as well, won't we? You mentioned you would be doing the German Valhalla Pro.
Yes, I'll be doing that in November. So I'll be
November.
from September
Okay.
onwards. Planning to
Okay.
anyway. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Look forward to following along, man.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, because
Thanks a million.
yeah, you seem to have been improving year on year. But look, I will leave everything for where to find information for WMBF Ireland in the description. Is there anywhere else that people can kind of find out more about what you're doing with WMBF or with your own kind of journey?
Just the WMBF Ireland website, WMBF Instagram. Share your stories. If there's anyone interested in sponsoring the show, because we're looking for a sponsor, or sponsor category, or there's plenty of things anyway that you could do anyway to contribute. We're looking for it anyway. So if you want to advertise your coaching or whatever like that, you can sponsor a category or something like that. And we can send on the information to you via email or through Instagram.
Awesome. All right. I will leave everything in the description then. As I mentioned, if you did enjoy the podcast, do make sure to leave a rating and review on the podcast platform you're listening on. Other than that, we will catch you in the next one.